Guess what? All 15 Chinese people gave me the same answer. What's up everyone, this is Rita aka 范老师, your Chinese teacher. Welcome back to my channel. You probably have seen some Chinese analysis on Mark Zuckerberg's speech in Tsinghua University and John Cena's interviews or his vlogs in China. But did you ever wonder how good their Chinese is to Chinese people? Whose Chinese makes natives want to talk with them more? And more importantly, what can we learn from them? I don't mean the vocab or grammar, especially now the pronunciation. As someone who's been teaching Mandarin for 10 years, I already have so many of my own metrics for assessing a learner's language ability. On the flip side, I also wanted to ask for my Chinese friends' thoughts when it comes to the instinct of normal native speakers. So here's what I did. I posted 2 video clips of Zuckerberg and Cena speaking Mandarin, and also a small survey on my Chinese social media asking whose Chinese do you think is better? And who would you rather chat with? And I received a bunch of responses immediately, including my mom, who doesn't speak any foreign languages, not even hello. So the results are pretty reliable. The clips I posted were the ones that I think speak enough for their strengths and weakness of their Chinese language ability at the time. So now let's take a look first.
他是我的朋友 Jimmy Fallon。Jimmy Fallon 工作是主持人，在电视节目名字《The Tonight Show》。请在将来，你跟你的父母一起看到我的新的电影，名字 Ferdinand。Ferdinand 开始 December 15th。你不看到我，但是你可以看到 Jimmy Fallon。
What do you think? Well, if I'm asked, I would want to help him improve at least these aspects. He might want to pay more attention to consonants ch, ch, sh, and zhi, chi, shi, and ji, qi, xi. Although he pronounced 主持人 as 主持人. But since quite a lot of Chinese people with regional dialect accents don't really differentiate 支持师 versus 支持师, so it's acceptable, sort of. But all of his 叽叽叽 sounds, which are super hard for Americans, I like 支持师。
一起，新的。
And that could cause a lot more confusion. And if you are still confused with these 9 consonants in Chinese and you want to improve your pronunciation in 10 minutes, check out my last video. There are also obvious errors of 跟、公、但是、dash, but we can just skip it and jump into the tones. We don't need to nitpick every single tone like some exaggerated third tones or not low enough. If you don't know how low you should go, check my tone explain video. But actually, what I want to say is that I did hear some clear tones there in his sentences, like 父母一起我的新的 However, if we dive into the sentences, it seems like he hasn't really mastered basic time word like next week, 下个星期 or December 15th, 12月15号, or maybe it's just for promotion, which is fine. But 名字 is the noun for name.
电视节目名字 The Tonight Show.
And what he wanted to use was 名叫 being called as. 这个节目名叫 The Tonight Show. And Jimmy Fallon is the host of a show called The Tonight Show was definitely a difficult sentence for people learning by themselves like him. And if he knew all the modifiers in Chinese go before the noun, then he might have said the sentence like Jimmy Fallon 是一个叫 The Tonight Show 的节目的主持人. He also definitely struggled with the difference between 看 and 看到, which can be confusing, but it's not so complicated.
看到我的新的电影
Actually, I already explained it on my Instagram account Fun Chinese Club, where I post short stuff like internet slangs, word flashcards, vlogs, etc. So just go get your bite-sized Chinese tidbits there. Back to John Cena's Chinese. His biggest grammar mistake, which also is the biggest difference between Chinese and English, is that adverb phrases in Chinese, like on December 15th or in Beijing, all go before the verb. We can make a whole video of that. So instead of
Ferdinand Kaiser, December 15th.
we would say Ferdinand 12月15号开始. And for movie hitting theaters, we will use the verb 上映. So it should be Ferdinand 12月15号上映 or Ferdinand 12月15号上线 if it premiered online. Despite the mistakes, he is super confident as always when speaking Chinese, which you could say is a strength of being an athlete and an actor. But I really think it's something that all language learners should try our best to do. Because language learning is a journey of consistently making mistakes. I just asked my husband this morning in Spanish, ¿Cuántos huevos tienes? How many eggs or balls do you have? Instead of ¿Cuántos huevos quieres? How many eggs do you want? And my mother-in-law just laughed out in the next room. So we just gotta overcome the fear of failures. In fact, when you feel it, it's usually when you are honing skills and making progress. Hit the like if you agree, or comment why you don't agree. Okay, now let's watch Mark Zuckerberg's clip. I chose the Q&A section over the speech that he probably had prepared better. And it's more like conversations that we have in real life.
我觉得是不是我想要学习中国文化，中国是伟大的国家我觉得学习语言帮助我学习文化，所以我学习语言。第三是普通话很难，我只说英文，但是我喜欢挑战。
How much did you understand without subtitles? To Chinese people who are more familiar with English speakers' pronunciation error patterns, i.e. Chinese teachers like me, I think we can, to a pretty good degree, put his pronunciation and tone mistakes aside and use some more brain resources to think, okay, his sentence structure is clear and fairly correct. His vocabulary is pretty impressive. By using abstract words like 文化, 伟大, 挑战, as well as some super professional terms in technology industry in the rest of the interview. And he also had a logical flow like in the paragraph with conjunctions like second of all, third of all, but, etc. So overall, his Chinese is pretty good, at least his knowledge of Mandarin language. Of course, there's huge room for his pronunciation to improve. I barely hear syllable tones there, and his intonation is basically still English. Check this out. I think learning, I wanna learn Chinese culture. China is a great country. See what I mean? Okay, a quick recap. John Cena has a very limited vocabulary. Grammar is kind of messy, but pronunciation is not bad, given getting a Chinese-ish intonation with more correct tones. He lived in China for a while and worked with Chinese people, so he has definitely heard a lot more Chinese in the past. Mark Zuckerberg, on the contrary, has a way bigger vocabulary and more solid grammar foundation. If they both wrote articles in Chinese, I think it's obvious who would win. But when it comes to speaking to and being heard by Chinese natives, it's a different story. Time to review the results. I received 15 responses in one day, including a Chinese teacher in a primary school in Yunnan border area, a Manchu Beijing local doctor of law, my mom who moved to Beijing from Shanxi province 35 years ago, my cousin who is a physics professor and lived in Australia for years, an English teacher who has hundreds of thousands of followers, etc. etc. Guess what? 14 out of 15 votes that I received to my question, 你觉得谁的中文好? Whose Chinese do you think is better? Or for John Cena? Here are some comments. John is a lot better. I didn't understand what Mark was saying. At least I understood what John was talking about. Mark, this is the first time that I need to look at English subtitles to watch a Chinese video. And for the question, 你更愿意跟谁聊天? Who would you rather chat with? All 15 Chinese people gave me the same answer. John Cena. Well, this is the cruel reality, folks. We spend so many hours memorizing Chinese characters, expanding vocabulary, and figuring out grammatical structures. But as long as we keep ignoring the sounds of the language, there will always be a huge gap in your language proficiency, which means how well individuals can do with language in terms of speaking, writing, listening, and reading in real-world situations in a spontaneous and non-rehearsed context, according to Act 4, American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. This could be translated as improvised or unstructured communication with natives is the real test of your language level. If you are someone super famous like Mark Zuckerberg, no problem. People will wait for you to come up with next fancy word with a friendly smile, but oftentimes we gotta be fluent and accurate with the simple words so that the conversation can flow on without too many pauses. This is also one of the things that your Chinese tutor can help with the most. But among the language educator community, either Chinese or English teachers, there is always an argument of how to balance fluency and accuracy when teaching or drilling students, especially for beginners and especially for adults. For beginners whose native language is a distant one from Mandarin, the capitals and foreign grammar system could be so intimidating that people want to work on them from day one. In fact, a lot of schools and teachers would rush to the writing system as soon as possible, and save the pronunciation and tone correction for later. Reading/writing proficiency is usually prioritized over speaking/listening proficiency, and overall fluency as well. We're not gonna discuss people who don't learn characters, and my first ever video has explained why. For adult learners, reading and writing the language is naturally more comfortable, or at least it feels safer to do. For some, it might even feel like Zen meditation, whereas exposing yourself to the not yet comprehensible and strange sounds, and even trying to produce the weird tones and syllables just takes so much courage and effort to push yourself to practice, and it definitely requires a lot more time than learning some characters and words, maybe even more time if you don't get a good linguistic teacher. And the necessary repetition to make all the correct sounds come out of your mouth automatically is not the most exciting thing to do in the world. But do you know what is the most efficient process to master Chinese for adults? Hone your tones and pronunciation first. Use the time on differentiating sounds so that you will understand well, then speak well, so that all the words or sentences you learn and use in the future are gonna be acquired correctly in your mind in the first place. Chinese words are endless, but Chinese syllables are not. There are only so many you need to learn, and then you're good. I've lost count of the number of students who reached intermediate level in terms of vocab and grammar, but they just kept struggling with communicating with people outside of class due to lack of familiarity with sounds, until they realized where the real problem was and rebuilt their Mandarin sound system all over again. That's a huge waste of time, and the frustration during the whole process has held a lot of learners back from reaching to a higher level. The students who get to build a solid pronunciation foundation of Chinese, no matter when they do it, are usually the ones who can make friends with natives, blend into the local life well, and really enjoy using the language to communicate with others. And this is the ultimate goal of language learning, right? You can learn the fancy words like Zuckerberg sooner than you might think, and using them in writing definitely takes a bit more time. But to learn how to pronounce the sounds properly and freely is what you will benefit from the most in long run. John Cena won a narrow victory on this, and you can definitely do better. If you have been watching until now, you must be enjoying my content. And now you can meet the formal journalist Rita. I wrote about all aspects of Chinese culture on an English website for 3 years, and I had a Chinese rap column for a year and a half. I was also invited to one of the biggest music industry forums in Cannes last year as a speaker on a Chinese hip-hop panel. Like, I know Chinese rap and I love it. However, time is limited. I know there are millions of people who can write better English articles than me, but not so many can be a better Chinese teacher than me. So after I finished my last piece about Chinese female rappers, here I am, back to your Chinese learning video feed. So don't forget to subscribe and remember, with 范老师, Chinese makes perfect sense. I'll see you in the next video.